This is the final video for my AMP1 class, and I know you're excited about that. We are starting at the last half of chapter 15 with the ear. To start us off, the ear is divided into three basic components. We have the outer ear, which is this side of the tympanic membrane, which is more commonly known as the eardrum. You have the middle ear, which is this structure running right through here, and then you have the inner ear, which is actually inside of the temporal bone, all of this stuff running off in here. For the outer ear, the part that you could pierce running off through here, should you want to, although most people do pierce the lobule, it's called the auricle. Your book put pinna in parentheses. Pinnas, to me at least, are floppy ears like what you would have on a dog. For us, it's structured, and so we're going to call that the auricle. So all of this running through here is the auricle. Next, external acoustic meatus. That would be the ear canal. Some people stick Q-tips in there. That's a very risky procedure, but that is the place where some people stick Q-tips. Cerumen is earwax. It's produced by ceruminous glands. We had talked about those the first time back in, I think, the skin chapter. Cerumen has been shown to have some antibacterial properties, and so it does help clean the outer component of the ear. It's been shown also to be a slight insect repellent, and so that's one time where cleaning your ears does more harm than good. Not only does it put you at a higher risk for puncturing or rupturing your eardrum, but it can also make it more likely that bugs can crawl into your ears. And so basically leave your earwax alone is what most doctors say. Now if it impacts, they can take it out and it's not a problem. You just shouldn't try to do that for yourself. Next up, tympanic membrane is again more commonly called the eardrum. It's a very thin sheet of tissue that's very delicate. There are a lot of things you can do that can rupture it, and if it ruptures, it's I'm told super painful. I have not actually ruptured mine, at least not that I recall. This is a ruptured eardrum, and you can see the little perforation running right through there. We also are abnormally red. I believe if this picture is what I'm remembering, this was a scuba diving accident where the person did not depressurize the ear like they were supposed to, and so it ruptured. And so all of this back here was inflammation due to the damage that happened because they weren't able to pop their ears down there. The job of the tympanic membrane is to vibrate whenever sound hits it, and then that's going to start to shake some of the bones, and you can even see one of the bones that's connected off back here. So it starts to shake those, and sound is really all about shaking and vibration, and so this is going to be helping us transmit that sound into the middle and then inner ear. Next up, oval and round window. The oval window is what you have underneath the stapes, which used to be called the stirrups, but stapes is the correct ear for that right here. The round window is a little bit lower. I'm going to show you that on this picture. It's this little structure running right through here. Pharyngotympanic tube, a lot of doctors still call this the eustachian tube. Pharyngotympanic actually makes perfect sense though, because it's telling you it's going from the eardrum to the throat, and that's exactly what it does. That tube helps you equalize air pressure between the middle ear and then the outer ear. It is important to make a note that both of these two chambers are supposed to be air-filled. If the middle ear becomes infected or closed off and it starts to build up, then that pressure can start to force the tympanic membrane outward, and that's very painful. This is supposed to help prevent that, and so this tube just helps you pop your ears. This tube also, however, is a way for, again, a head cold to spread up into the ears and then become a middle ear infection. And so it's double-edged sword. It does help with maintaining pressure, but it does also create a pathway for things to make it into the ear canal. That actually takes us to otitis media, which is a middle ear infection. Used to be doctors had a knee-jerk reflex where they would prescribe antibiotics for ear infections. They're starting to get a little bit pickier about that because we're coming to a crisis when it comes to antibiotics and antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So basically, don't expect them 100% of the time. Sometimes the doctor is going to wait to see if they do come back. Usually children is what get otitis media. Adults tend to have larger tubes and it's harder for them to get occluded, and so it's not such a problem. If a child gets otitis media frequently, what they will sometimes do is go in and then put tubes into the ears. That's going to help with drainage in the middle ear so that you don't build up pressure. Usually those tubes end up falling out. Sometimes they do get stuck in and then the surgeon has to go in to remove them again afterwards. But they're supposed to fall out all on their very own. Next, the auditory ossicles. These are the three inner ear bones, and there's three per side, of course, 3 right, 3 left. The correct names for each of the bones are what I have in green. The parentheses words are what they usually teach you in middle school and high school, but you need to call them by their correct name, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. That is the order that they occur in from the tympanic membrane inward. So the malleus is the bone that's connected to the tympanic membrane. The incus is the in-between bone, and then the stapes connects to the oval window. The job for all of those ossicles collectively is to vibrate when the tympanic membrane vibrates, and then transfer that sound into the inner ear. So they're just helping to get the motion going in the correct direction. Next, once you're in the inner ear has three basic components. The semicircular canals are these three tubes that you have through here. The vestibule is the middle portion running through here, and then the cochlea is the little snail shell looking thing off over here. For the vestibule, what I want you to know is it measures what a lot of books call static equilibrium, and I think your book even calls it that. What that means is it tells you what position your head is in. Like, are you lying on your right side or are you lying on your left side? And so that's the job of the vestibule. Semicircular canals, on the other hand, do dynamic equilibrium, which means movement. Are you spinning to the right or are you spinning to the left? Now, what I want to mention, first off, this is an awesome game. If you've never played Dizzy Bat, give it a try. You get some good video if nobody gets hurt. Which sometimes they do because they fall down, usually when you play Dizzy Bat. But when you start spinning, the fluid that's inside the semicircular canal starts to spin as well. Now, because it's fluid, when you stop spinning, sometimes the fluid keeps moving through here for a little while. And so your semicircular canals are telling your brain you're still spinning when you're not. And so your eyes are reporting that you're not spinning, but your ear is reporting that you are spinning. And so that's where that feeling of dizziness comes from. It's a bit of conflicting information from the semicircular canals in the ear and then the eyes at the front of your face. Finally, you get to the cochlea. This is the part of the ear that is going to be responding to sound and vibration. Once it feels the vibration, it's going to be sending information to the brain, and then the brain is going to perceive that and then turn it into a speaking voice or a howling dog or a singing person. But the cochlea is, again, just reporting there's vibration of a certain amplitude and of a certain frequency. This right here is a section through the cochlea snail shell thing, and what I want you to notice is it consists of these little rings. There are several of them here in this particular picture. In a portion of this, you have the next structure that we're going to talk about, which is the organ of Corti. It exists right through here in part of the ring known as the scala medium. So coming up and blowing up the organ of Corti a little bit, what you have here are a bunch of specialized cells that are called hair cells. They're called hair cells because they have little hairs that are sort of kind of like cilia across the top surface. I say sort of kind of like cilia because cilia's job is movement, and these are here to detect movement, not to help with movement. What it will essentially be like is if a hair on one of the cells bends over, that's going to start a graded potential within that cell. If the hair stays bent over long enough, we're going to start an action potential that's going to get relayed off to the brain, and we're going to start to hear something. So this is the organ of Corti. It contains the hair cells that are going to actually be detecting the sound and then sending the information off. Okay, next. This whole entire ring right here consists of three what are known as scala. You have the scala vestibuli, or the scala vestibule is how it's written in the notes, probably because autocorrect decided to fix that for me. This is the top one. Perilymph is a fluid that is very much like plasma. It has ions in it. It's just fluid that's floating around through it. So this is the first part of the ear that we've talked about, where I'm hitting on the fact that it's fluid-filled, not air-filled, although the semicircular canals in the vestibule are also fluid-filled. The scala media is the part that actually contains the organ of Corti, and then the scale tympani is just filled with perilymph off down here at the bottom as well. Doodling this picture to the side can really help you get the scala vestibuli, the scala media, and then the scala tympani, so I'm going to recommend you doodle that picture. For describe the sound conduction pathway, I'm not sure if I have it listed nice and neat on here, so I'm going to come back to the picture. This one. Okay, so here's your sound conduction pathway. It flows through the auricle, through the external acoustic meatus, and vibrates the tympanic membrane. It starts to shake the malleus, which shakes the incus, which shakes the stapes. It starts to vibrate the oval window, which relays the sound to the cochlea. And so that's how the sound is going to be getting where it's going. For explaining how you can differentiate between pitch and loudness, that's something that I'm going to have to cover in class because I need to draw some stuff out on the board, so we'll do that in class. After that, you have label the ear. This is the stuff that's in the book. I'm going to have you guys add some things to it, though, because I only gave you this one picture, and I do want you to have it all in one place. So, next up, label semicircular canals. Sorry that I write very messy when I'm writing with my finger on a computer screen. And apparently I can go off the edge too. Semicircular canals. Look at me learning things. I think I have a pen that will light on the screen. Let me try an eraser. Hey, erasers don't work. Alright, next up you have the vestibule. I'm going to abbreviate. Finally you have the cochlea, which I'm also going to abbreviate. Next, label the Malleus, the incus, and the stapes. Everything else is pretty much already labeled for you up there, so hopefully, even with my horrible computer handwriting, you've got your ear picture labeled. Next up, deafness is an inability to hear, of course. There are two broad types of deafness, conduction deafness versus sensorineural deafness, and the difference between those two has to do with what exactly is broken inside of your ear. For conduction deafness, it means that the sound isn't getting to where it's supposed to go. So maybe you have impacted earwax in your ear, maybe you have a ruptured eardrum, maybe you just have arthritis between the bones up there, but for whatever reason, the sound isn't being transmitted to where it's supposed to. And so that would be conduction deafness. And again, the key to that, conduction means it's not getting where it's supposed to go. Sensorineural, on the other hand, works entirely differently. Here, there's a problem with the cochlea itself. Hair cells are broken, the auditory nerve can be broken, but you're not hearing because the inner ear happens to be damaged. So here's where I want to talk about this picture oh so quickly. As a person who shoots guns, because I live in Texas and you kind of have to down here, there are a lot of things wrong with this particular picture. What I'm going to focus on right now is the fact that none of these people are wearing hearing protection. If you're going to shoot guns and you want to still be able to hear as you get older, you need to wear hearing protection, because what happens anytime you have a sound that is crazy loud, like a gunshot, what it does is it forces the hairs on the hair cells to bend over, and because the sound was so loud, it pushes them down so hard that they stay down for a while. You can notice this whenever you go shooting and you don't wear hearing protection, or you hear a really loud sound, and then afterwards you keep hearing ringing in your ears. It's because that hair cell is still saying, I still hear a sound, I still hear a sound, I still hear a sound. Now, over time, the more that you do something like that, shoot without hearing protection, eventually those hairs never pop back up and stop sending the signal. And here's where the brain comes in. The brain will eventually get so sick of hearing this cell say that it keeps hearing something that it's going to start to ignore that cell and no longer responds to any stimulus from it. That is sensorineural deafness because hair cells have been damaged. That's a big part of why as you get older you're more likely to need hearing aids. It's just because those hair cells are starting to die off as they get older. That's part of it anyway. So moral to that story is wear your hearing protection. Now, some types of sensorineural deafness we can fix now with cochlear implants, and I'm going to show you a couple videos in class for this one, but what I want to mention is if a child is born deaf, it is best to do the cochlear implants early in life. Almost all of your verbal skills are set early in life, and so if you wait until they're old enough to consent and they're 8 or 12 or 18, their brain is already past the point where it's going to be easy for them to pick up those sounds. If you do it when they're first born or just after, they're still going to pick up language fairly normally, and so it's best to do the surgery early. Now here's the other thing that I want to mention about this. There are some videos that are out there now that show people getting cochlear implants, and it shows them, they turn them on, and the people are just wonderful and they're able to have a conversation right now. And that can be very misleading, because what you need to understand is if the person was fully 100% deaf and they get cochlear implants, that doesn't mean they're magically going to be able to understand English or understand whatever language is being spoken in that area, because the brain has no idea how to interpret any of those sounds. And so for a lot of people, it's overwhelming when they get cochlear implants later in life because, again, the brain's not used to it. the brain does not like to not be used to things, and so it can do some really weird things. There have been cases where people have actually started to rip the wires out of their head because they're overwhelmed by all the sounds that are coming in that they've never heard before. And so it's something that an older individual will want to think really long and hard about in terms of a cochlear implant. I also just like showing the x-rays for this. Notice just how complicated a cochlear implant is, with all the wires that go through the jaw and around the head and then in through the temporal bone. And it's a very complicated surgery, so you definitely don't want somebody trying to rip at any of those wires. All right. Next up, tinnitus. I described that ringing in the ears that can happen after loud sounds. That's a form of tinnitus. Tinnitus can also just randomly, you start to hear a ringing. That can be part of it as well. And then finally, you have motion sickness, which I don't think I have a slide for. Motion sickness is kind of like what I was describing with dizziness earlier. It's a bit of conflicting information between the eyes and the ears, where one of them is saying you're moving and the other one is saying you're not, and your brain doesn't know what's up because it's getting conflicting information. Let's see, I think it's ASAP Science has a video on YouTube that kind of helps to explain how motion sickness works, but the key to that is it's conflicting information between the eye and the ear. After that, you just have your Latin roots and your related clinical terms, and that is all of the notes for AMP1. I hope you enjoyed it all.